You're watching Scuzz TV. My name's Matt Stocks, here at the London Cocktail Club in the heart of London, joined by Dan Donegan and David Drayman for Distrubed on the record. We're going to be talking all about the new record, which comes out August 21st. But I thought, first of all, we'd take a trip down memory lane, get a bit of Distrubed history. Obviously, for you guys, it's been, a huge success story from day one, really. But I was reading, David, you weren't actually the original singer in Distrubed. Obviously, your voice is so synonymous now with Distrubed. Dan, I wonder if you could tell us how you came to find this extremely talented vocalist in your band and the audition process and how that all kind of went down.
Oh, go on.
Well, yeah, really, we weren't really Disturbed actually until we got him. We were a previous, local band of just trying to find all the right pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah.
And so we struggled around the Chicago music scene just for many years with our friends that were singers and local guys that we knew around the scene, and just didn't really have the right guy yet. Just we struggled with it, and we finally took out an ad in a local music publication and auditioned a few guys. David, we spoke on the phone and we hit it off, just kind of talking about things we were into, and he came out and he was really the only guy that was like ready to start improvising and jump into originals.
I heard he came with some new material, which is the first person to do that, right?
Right. I mean, because most auditions, you got to play something, so we'd end up playing cover songs with anybody that was trying out. And David's like, let's not do that. He's like, just play me something you guys have. And I just started a new riff I was working on. We just start playing the music. David just listened to what we're doing. A minute or two into it, he started improvising these big melodies, and it just, it was undeniable at the time. We didn't want to seem so obvious.
I read that you were kind of keeping the smile.
Right, I'm like trying not to hand him the gig just yet, but I'm like, wow, he's big voice, powerful voice, sounded like he had an identity. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. When you're a young band, many artists at that age tend to lean towards their heroes and try to sound like them, emulate them. David just sounded like he had his own voice, and so that was a huge thing too. And so it ended up being the song "Want" that's on the Sickness album. It was the very first day, very first hour we were together. The music kind of changed and it evolved into something else, but that main hook, that melody, stuck from day one, and that kind of became something for us. So. Pretty easy choice once we heard him. I think the collaboration from there, it was just spending time together of songwriting and just developing, because we didn't know what our sound was going to be like. We knew what we were into and what influenced us, but it was a whole new thing. So it was really the birth of Disturbed. So what we did in the past didn't really matter. It was just stepping stones to get to that point. Once we found each other, it was like, okay, now this is a whole new inspiration. And it just started to develop from there.
Do you nothing in the round with my neuroscope of reality? I can feel it all start slipping away. See, but I don't get it. Don't you think maybe we can put it on credit? Don't you think I can take it, trouble, I don't let it. I can stupid boy. It's all the same as ain't living it, but I don't get it. Don't you think maybe we can put it on credit? Don't you think I can take it, trouble, I don't let it. I can stupid boy.
And I guess you found success pretty much right out the gate, right? I mean, The Sickness was a pretty internationally...
It was, but it wasn't right out of the gate. It's not like we debuted gigantically. It was a nice, gradual, organic bit of growth that looked relatively quick on the outside because people don't know everything that led up to it,
Right.
But even our first single, Stupefy, it wasn't an instant thing. It was a hard sell at radio initially, and we had to work it. And back then, Giant Records had to work it, and eventually, it took on a life of its own. We were very fortunate with that.
I remember seeing you live on the Manson tour, 2001, and you had the big electric chair. And, it's very rare that a support act. I mean, nowadays, you maybe see Manson play and you wouldn't have that kind of stage production. And it was a phenomenal live show. And that album, I think, when it came over here, really connected with the UK audience.
Yeah, we were doing that at a local level. We were in just small neighborhood bars, putting on a show and trying to do whatever we can production-wise to also make a statement, not just with the music, but just something that people would talk about theatrically at that moment too. And
the whole rationale behind these theatrical intros, because there were so many different ways that I was executed, right? The electric chair, the gas chamber. What's the point behind all of it? What's the message? Well, why do we call ourselves Disturbed? The idea behind it was that the tendency of society to simply follow the flock and to not embrace their own individuality and to just follow every little trend that they're fed and whatnot, and how the people who do decide to embrace their individuality and they set themselves apart from the norm of society, that they're viewed as outcasts of a sort. You don't fit. You're not with the what's in vogue, what's in trend, or whatever the case may be. And that tendency to ostracize and demonize those who are different just for being different was what disturbed us. And what does society do to individuals who are different? They weed them out, they hunt them down, they ostracize them, they persecute them, they execute them. So that was the point.
And luckily for you guys, obviously there's plenty of individuals out there who do want to be different, right? Who don't want to follow the current.
Well, we've made a career on it.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there are plenty of different people out there.
Album number 2, of course, as well. People talk about the difficult second album. I mean, for you guys, it was very obvious when it came out that you wanted to broaden the soundscape. Obviously, it debuted at number 1. That would be the first of 4 consecutive albums so far to debut on the billboards at number 1. What's your memory of making that second album? Did the pressure and the fame and the success of that first kind of weigh on you? Did you feel like you had to prove a point with that second album?
Sure. It does to any musician. Your sophomore release, there comes with the sophomore curse.
Yeah.
You have to overcome that. We were as nervous as any young band. Look, we're still nervously excited any time a record comes out, whether or not we can measure up to what we've done. The further along in your career you go, the more challenging it becomes. So that was just the beginning.
Yeah, right.
And to be honest, there wasn't even really even back then, there wasn't a conscious effort to broaden things per se. Like for instance, the first single on the record, Prayer, was something that we wrote on the road before we were done with the Sickness touring cycle. I mean, we like to just
the natural evolution of a band, right?
We like to just go in whatever direction feels right.
We got to trust our gut. And coming off the success of the Sickness as well as it did at the end of that touring cycle, we couldn't just try to think taking the safe route of let's just do exactly what we just did on the first album because it worked so well. That would be cheating ourselves and cheating the fans. We had to naturally follow our gut of where we wanted to go musically with it and song-wise. Otherwise, we didn't want to do a part 2 of Disturbed. And Down with the Sickness and Stupefy and those hits. They're great songs. We love them, but we just wanted to continue growing as writers, as musicians, and always evolve and just push ourselves there. It wasn't just going to be a copycat of the first album.
And then I guess album number 3, 10,000 Fists, was sort of, if it's safe to say, the best bits of the first 2. It had those heavier, more aggressive moments. It also had the more melodic leanings and complexities in the structures as well. Is album number 3 when you begin to kind of feel like you're finding that sound which is distinct to you guys? But those first 2 sort of the shaping and evolving of that. I mean, by the time you get to the third, is that when you're like, okay, this is us now. This is kind of Disturbed.
It was us from day one.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that identity has been there since the very first track that has been heard from us. I don't, even though there are minor stylistic differences or variations, the signature Disturbed sound has always been present and has always been there. Again, in my humble opinion.
And still is with the new one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that what Dan mentioned about the identity is something that we as a band are very fortunate to have a very strong one collectively. And I really do believe that has been present. I mean, I hear what you're saying, that since that record seemed to fuse the elements from the two in many ways, that maybe we were finding a comfort zone. But if this new record proves anything, it proves that there is no specific comfort zone for us.
Right.
We're willing to go in whatever direction feels right as we're going in that direction. There are no limitations.
Yes, I am stricken and can't let you go.
Album number 4, Indestructible. This was the 4th album of yours, 3rd to go consecutive in at number 1. That's a pretty huge achievement, right?
Yeah.
And you know, by that point, you're still kind of maintaining this huge level of success that you've established.
The Disturbed fan base.
How do you keep up with that whirlwind?
You know, you don't really think about it in that sense, I suppose. The whirlwind is watching your fan base grow, you know, exponentially over the course of time. The whirlwind is having things happen like, you know, playing your hometown on Ozfest, you know, deciding to close the second stage and having to be moved to the main because you created a near riot situation for 25,000 people pouring into an area that can only accommodate 10. That's whirlwind. You know, the rest of it, it's just the extra sort of flavor.
Noise.
Yeah, to any band who truly, truly loves the purity of what they do, it's all about the live experience and seeing that and feeling that and giving people their release and making people, you know, forget about the bullshit of the world for a little bit and feel powerful and transcend things, and that's what it all comes down to. The rest of it is all wonderful, don't get me wrong. We're grateful for every aspect of it, but at the end of the day, live, 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 and that's what gets us most excited. And what we have been very blessed with and very encouraged to always see is that with each record, it continued to grow and expand. That's always been a tremendous motivational force for us.
Album number 5, Asylum, 4th consecutive number 1. Pretty angry, dark, introspective in many ways album. Is that a reflection of your personal lives at that time? Was it a difficult time personally? Mm-hmm. And was that why the decision was made after that to kind of then take that break? I mean,
No?
Well, let's talk first of all about that album and the kind of themes that were going on.
When I first started penning lyrics for the record, besides how the music already felt dark, the musical ideas that Danny had sent me, and when I started, you know, when I came up with the melody form, and it added to the dark element to it, and I was in a really, really depressed state at the time. I was in a horrible headspace. I had just broken up with my wife at the time. She was supposed to move to Austin, Texas with me at the time, and we had a falling out, and we weren't married yet. So I ended up moving to Austin on my own, and I had just lost my dog Lisa, and I had a new pup coming, and from a litter and whatever, and the pup died in transit to me, and while I had all the baby pictures of it and everything, I was like, you know, it was like adding insult to injury, and it's like, I know these all sound like relatively trivial things, but when when you're already in a fairly depressed state, it's like bricks falling on you. And I just kind of downward spiraled for a little bit and used the music, as I always have, for catharsis and therapy. I mean, like 2 or 3 songs in, Dan called me, I remember, and he's like, you know, dude, are you okay? Because it was, I mean, if you read some of the shit and you really kind of get a vibe for what was going on, there were some red flags up, you know? I mean, I wasn't in a good state of mind, that's for sure.
I read a quote about when you wanted to take the break. It said everything was strategic. We wanted to give ourselves a chance to breathe, give fans the chance to breathe, give culture the chance to evolve. Now it's time. The environment feels ready. The musical landscape feels ready. We're ready.
Well, that's the most important part that you just hit on. We're ready.
You guys as a band, as individuals.
We're ready to unleash this fire that has built up inside of us over this hiatus. That was what it was for, to make both band and fans get a renewed appreciation for one another. Things had become too predictable. Things had become too cyclical. Make a record tour, make a record tour. That, you know, they're not events anymore then. It's just something that happens regularly. And you kind of feel like you're just stepping back into the office and punching your time clock and going again. There's something definitely to be said about the relevance and power of the notion of absence making the heart grow fonder. And it did for both of us. And so we were not going to return until we felt like we were burning with a desire to do so, and that we had, you know, the passion and conviction to put together the material that it took to set the world on fire. So, you know, that's where we're at. And I think that we're very proud of what we've done, and we can only hope that this record is satisfactory enough to make them feel like this time away from each other was justified.
Well, I've heard it, and I can confirm it is. It's called Immortalised, out August 21st. Am I right in thinking it was the most collaborative effort of all of your releases? It was a real case of teamwork, bringing the best of the best of the best to the table, and really kind of honing in on all the band's strengths and sharing the writing duties and experience.
And letting a very strong producer in his own right into the fold as well, who has his own tremendous creative abilities. Kevin is a brilliant creative mind. This experience was unique on a number of different levels. Even prior to us working with Kevin, before we even knew we were going to, the experience was different just because it was the first time since 2001 that we wrote all of this material with all of us in the same room at the same time.
That's got to be the best way to do it, right?
There is no substitute for the magic and the chemistry that you're able to harness, that we're able to harness, thankfully.
The technology, that technology makes it convenient to be able to send files and get the ball rolling to get ideas, but the magic of being in the room together is just undeniable, and that's what we needed to get back to. And it was amazing, and like you said, with the collaboration on this, you know, in the previous albums, not that we sacrificed anything on it, but we got away from that. But in previous albums, when we would enter the studio, it's like, okay, I got my guitar parts ready, he's got his vocal parts ready. This time of coming in, of having the ideas, but keeping the open mind of writing and collaborating in that moment, and just vibing off the part, knowing that the interaction of sharing those moments of improvising and watching these songs develop and not getting too attached to the early stages of it. So it was a lot easier for me to change parts because I'm not as married to them as I would have been in the past, or vice versa. Somebody can make a suggestion without bruising any egos, because now I've been playing the riff so much at home that I don't want to change it. Yeah. Or he's got his melody stuck in his head that he doesn't want to change that, or for any of the guys. So it made it a lot easier to sit in a room, improvise, write, and then record on the spot when we're in that moment, and just capture that magic as it's happening.
Sleep soundly in your beds tonight. Judgment falls up on you at first light. I'm the hand of God. I'm the dark Messiah. I'm the vengeful one.
The Vengeful One was the lead single. That's the third track on the album. The music video, of course, is live. People can see that. And again, I guess thematically, you guys, politics, war, religion, environmentalism, things like this have always been, you know, a very overwhelmingly resonant kind of area of topic that you like to really get your teeth into. Talk to us a little bit about that, I guess, when you've been away for that time, there's obviously a lot of thought that goes into the single, which you want to lead the campaign off, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about the Vengeful One is it's got enough meat and potatoes to make the core Disturbed fans satisfied, but does push the envelope somewhat stylistically and sonically for us. So it does show a bit of evolution, but is familiar enough that it can reinvigorate everyone. So we felt good about it. And, you know, even the message of it alone, the meaning of it, yeah, the dark and ominous aspect, yeah, kind of what you needed to come back with to a fan
Fantasy
base.
and monsters, isn't it, as well? There's always that kind of...
Yeah, well, for the way I wrote the song, it wasn't intended that way. The way that Phil Mucci interpreted it in the video, you know, utilizing the guy, it certainly turned into that, and he did a great job with it. You know, the idea behind the song is that it's depicting the Archangel Gabriel,
Yeah.
you know, looking over the world, and you know, the destroyer, the right hand of God, the guy who laid Sodom and Gomorrah to waste. You know, and if you believe in that sort of thing. And he's looking over the planet, seeing the destruction, seeing humanity preying upon itself, seeing the media fuel conflicts all over the globe and the agendas and the greed, and saying that you've gone too far. There's no turning back, and the slate must be wiped clean.
And I guess the agenda for you guys as a band is, with the next song, Open Your Eyes, is encouraging people who listen to your music to be aware and conscious of what's
I encourage
going on around.
people, whether they listen to our music or not, to be aware and open their eyes. People are fed a fairly steady stream of bullshit on a regular basis that everyone is just expected to ingest and lap up and believe. And there are so many distractions in this world, and there's so much sleight of hand going on. And we just encourage people to try and seek out the truth.
We haven't got time to go through all the songs. Obviously, we don't want to spoil the whole record as well. If people haven't heard it yet, we want to leave some things as a surprise. There's a cover that I want to talk to you about in a bit. I know you guys famously always enjoyed getting your teeth into other people's material. Before that, though, where was the song here? You're Mine, a love song. I guess just a traditional...
Yeah, the way Disturbed would do it, I suppose.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I mean, lyrically, it's a love song. You know, but it's pretty damn well in your face, pretty aggressive.
As is the title. It's
yeah.
not like I like you, it's like You're Mine.
That's right. That's right.
And the light as well. For me, you're a proper like Queen-esque kind of huge.
I take
bombastic.
that as a tremendous compliment. That's very, very, very gracious of you.
Slightly new territory for you guys. One of the highlights of the album for me. There's some electronical elements in there as well. But let's talk about this cover. The Sounds of Silence, Simon and Garfunkel. A pretty iconic song. You know, one of the greatest songs ever, really. So synonymous with the 60s and that kind of countercultural time. I guess, you know, in the world we live in today, it's resonant still. Talk to me about getting your teeth into a song like that, though, and reinterpreting it the way you have, and successfully pulling it off. Because when the keys started and I realised it was that song, I was like, "Whoa!" I have to admit, I was like, "They're going in." But I thought it was a fantastic reimagining. I thought you really owned it. You made it your own.
Thank you.
And a really interesting choice that, you know, some of the more hardcore metal fans might not necessarily be straight into straight away. But I love it. I thought it was great.
It was a really an adventure of discovery, rediscovery for me, because I hadn't allowed myself to go into that zone vocally for so many years. And the night that we actually did it, I was done with vocals for the day. I wasn't planning on tracking. And Kevin played me this piano arrangement that he came up with, and it was beautiful. And we found a key that felt good so that I could do that octave shift mid-song, which he had the idea for. And then I went into the vocal booth, and 3-4 hours of tracking, more tracking than I'd ever done in a vocal booth at one time before. And take after take of version, different runs, melodies, rhythmic variations, and 3 days of comping the thing later. Kevin plays it for me, and I listened to it 3 times before I even said anything to him, and he thought I didn't like it. And I was, not that I didn't like it, I couldn't turn around because I was getting misty-eyed listening to it at the control desk. And, you know,
Yeah, I think just trying to take it down a different path, and like David mentioned earlier, we didn't want to be predictable on doing the typical put the Disturbed stamp on it, how people would want it. And we didn't do it this way just for the sake of being different. I just thought it would be more challenging to go down this road and try to find, make a version of it that's really going to have the vocals carry this song emotionally from start to finish. And so even picking the right key was so important to the song, because it puts David's vocals in a spot that the fans have never heard him before. And it
Exposed, right?
Yeah, it really made him vulnerable. And just having that song carried in creating a bed of music that would be complementary towards the vibe and towards his performance, but really have we didn't want to have music stomp on it or get in the way by having bombastic drums brought in and heavy guitars and that. So we thought by this orchestra string section with some timpani and just building it almost like a soundtrack in some sort of way, but really focus on the vocal performance to carry it. And so I think the idea was there as we further thinking about it, but I think it probably surpassed all our expectations once we executed it.
Well, I can't wait for the Disturbed fans out there to hear it. The record as a whole, as I've said, is a real triumph for you guys. So welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your time off, and I hope there won't be any more lengthy periods of larking about being lazy for a while.
Can't guarantee
You're back
that.
to stay?
We're back to stay. We were never, gone for good. That was always something we tried to make clear, but people love believing the worst.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is that Disturbed records or tours will no longer be a cyclical thing. That it's going to happen every once in a while when we feel re-inspired to go back out there and do it. And that can be a couple years apart, it can be more, it depends. It'll really depend on our barometer. And we don't want to go out there until we're completely re-energized and ready to unleash hell.
Good times. You've been watching Disturbed on the record. Dan, David, thank you very much for your time. The Immortalised is out August 21st. Congratulations, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Appreciate it.
Cocktails on me, yeah?
Come on.